Okay, sorry, I think I'm late by like 2 minutes, but it's okay. We'll finish up in time. So, firstly, good evening, everyone. Hello, welcome back, scholars. Welcome back to your own channel. Um, it's weekend, Saturday, I get that, but sparing 1 hour of time for a class, I don't think I'm asking for too much. So, anyways, I'm hoping everybody is having a good weekend, but let's just focus on the chapter for like an hour and then we can go back to the weekend mood. Yeah. Anyways, hello, good evening. Dheeraj is here with us. Hi, Dheeraj, good evening. Okay, I'm hoping other people will join in the meantime. I will do the introductory part. So, we're dealing with chapter 6 as of now, which is titled as the three orders, right? Since it's Saturday, we are going to have a class for standard 11, just making that clear in the beginning itself. So we've already done 3 parts on this, right? So today we'll be having like a 4th part of this chapter. So majorly we'll be talking about certain aspect of the church life. Yeah. So coming to about me, a little bit about me. My name is Nikitha and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel, and a little bit about my background. I have recently graduated from Ashoka University with a bachelor's major in history and a minor in political science. So that's my educational qualifications. And quickly moving on to a couple of Unacademy's plus and iconic features. So when it comes to plus, there are a lot of features. The first is you can actually learn live from the comfort of your houses. You can have unlimited access to all the courses, and you can listen to the classes of top educators of India, and all of them are available on one single platform. There are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions, practice tests, and also live test series. Along with that, there's exhaustive coverage of syllabus, there's mentorship provided, there's also guidance provided to you, along with access to study materials, which are usually in the form of PDFs. So those are a couple of features. And when it comes to plus pricing, there are actually 6 durations for this. So the first is a 3-month subscription, and the price for that is clearly listed just beside the duration. In the same manner, we also have 5 other subscriptions, which is a 9-month one, then we have a 12-month subscription, then we have 15, 18 and 24. And again, the prices for each of them are clearly listed just beside the duration. But the hack here is the longer duration you actually take a subscription for, the more beneficial it's going to be for you, because at the end of the day you're going to save yourself a couple of bucks by subscribing for a longer duration. So that's how it works. And quickly moving on to iconic, here the features are even better and greater when compared to plus, in the sense that there's personal mentorship provided, there are live doubt solving sessions, there are weekly reports. Along with that, there's also a direct parent connect, and study planners are also provided. So that's how iconic works. And iconic pricing might actually hike a little bit when compared to plus, because of the special features it has, obviously. And the durations are the same, right? Those are the same 6 durations, but pricing is a little bit different when compared to plus. Again, like they're clearly up on the screen, the monthly thing and like the total package thing. So have a look at these prices clearly, and feel free to go ahead with whichever one you want to. And lastly, about the pricing, if you use this code, which is TUM10, you can get a 10% off straight away while you're trying to like subscribe to these either plus or iconic subscriptions. So that is a little bit advantage. And since you're 11th standard students, this basically applies to you. It's Unacademy's combat scholarship test. As the name suggests, it's a scholarship test, and you can win worth 1 crore rupees. So that's an exciting offer. So like, highly urge you all to go join it and enroll yourselves. The link for this is in the description below of this video. So like, go check it out, go check the dates. Like, it usually happens every week. this week it's happening tomorrow, right, at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So the format is as such that you will be given 60 minutes to answer and 30 questions are asked. Tests are conducted in both Hindi and English, and these are free live tests on Android app and web. So go ahead and enroll yourselves and take part in the quiz. And there's something called Bucks Bounty as a part of Unacademy's effective learning strategies. So it's an opportunity for all of you learners to report any inappropriate content in the video. So you can be the first one to report a particular issue, like be it any inappropriate issue, and then you can claim your prize. And you can also report any inappropriate content using the form in the description. Like there's a link in the description. You can click on that and then you can report it. So that's how Bucks Bounty work. Okay, so that's a little bit we have for the pitch. I think we can quickly move on to the actual topic for today. Okay, a couple of y'all joined. Hello everyone. Good evening who just joined. Okay, I think we can go ahead. We have really interesting stuff coming up today, because we'll be talking about the technology part. Yeah, in what terms did agriculture develop over certain centuries. So that's the first subtopic we'll be dealing with in today's class. Yeah, so it's titled as New Agricultural Technology. So by the 11th century, right, like the turn of the millennium, it is very clear to the observers that there is definitely some kind of development, some kind of technological development that is happening in the agricultural sector, right? And when is this change coming about? It's usually coming in the 11th century. Yeah, so during this 11th century, or let's say prior to the 11th century, before the 11th century, to plow a piece of land in order to sow your seeds, the only equipment that was available are wooden plows, right? Wooden plows. But once the 11th century kicked in, cultivators or these peasants, they came up with new agricultural technological tools, and they started using heavy iron tipped plows, right? So there's a lot of difference between wood and iron, right? Just imagine placing a piece of wood in the soil and trying to turn the soil. It's not that effective. But if the same time you put some sharp edged iron tipped plows into the soil and try to turn the soil, it's very effective, right? Because of its sharp nature, because of the nature of the material itself. Yeah, and we also had mold boards. Again, mold boards are also another kind of plows which are very efficient in turning the topsoil properly. Yeah, so because of this, what happens? Nutrients of the soil are renewed. Yeah, so that thing came up in the 11th century, and these plows could dig much deeper. Yeah, we're talking about mold boards, right? So obviously because of their efficiency, they could penetrate much deeper into the soil, and that is why they are able to turn the topsoil properly. Yeah, once they turn the topsoil, the nutrients are renewed or refreshed, and that is how so many nutrients are available to the plant. Then the productivity will be more, right? So that's how this technology helps in increasing productivity. Yeah, the same point I was saying, right? With this, the nutrients from the soil are better utilized or are better absorbed by the plant. Yeah, through the roots and then the stems and to the leaves, all that biology part which we learned in class 8, 9. Yeah, you know how the plants grow, how the plants function. So apply the same philosophy here, except the part that tilling of the soil is done by the heavy iron tipped plows and mold boards, right? So that's about the tilling of the soil and using of plows. But another technology we have is the harnesses. Harnesses are nothing but the ropes, right? Ropes were usually built around the necks of the animals. Yeah, and then some kind of plow was attached to the animal, and then as the animal walks, the soil is tilled, right? That's what usually used to happen in the olden days. But when the 11th century started kicking in, instead of tying these harnesses to the neck of the animal, yeah, so now shoulders are being used, right? The shoulders of the animals are much stronger, they have a greater grip, yeah, they have greater power. So the shift happened from the neck of the animal to the shoulder of the animal. Obviously, because of this, now the animal can take in more pressure and power, right? Because the shoulders are much stronger than the necks. So in that way also the ploughing happened effectively. Yeah, so that's about the harnesses tied onto the animals' necks and shoulders. Okay. Okay, Abhinandan is here. Good evening, Abhinandan. Yeah, sure, Abhinandan. What's your doubt? Okay, your doubt is what shod means are, right? Again, very simple. We are exactly getting to that point right now. So let's listen properly, Abhinandan. So shods are nothing but shoes, guys. Like, honestly, but these are not like the shoes which humans wear, but there are some kind of shoes which horses wear, right? So the material which is used to cover the foot of the horse is called as shod. Yeah, that's the literal meaning of shod. So again, like what you, so the definition of shod is clear. Oh, sorry, you're Ayushi. Sorry, Ayushi. So Ayushi, you got the definition of the shod, right? It's nothing but the material used to cover the foot of the horse. So how did that play into the agriculture, right? So the point being, horses are now better shod with iron horseshoes. Again, like if you ask the horse to go and do some sort of work in the agricultural field, like just compare it with humans, right? If we go barefoot into the field, obviously like some kind of decay, some kind of wounds or like bloodshed or swelling of the foot, something will happen, like something bad to the foot. Yeah, but if we wear some kind of shoes or like sandals and then go into the field, it acts as some kind of protective layer, right? This in the same way, in order to protect the foot of the horses, these shods are used. And how are these shods effective? Because they are made up of iron, and iron is a very strong metal. Like even if you like want to bend it deliberately, it won't break. Yeah, so that way horses' feet were protected because they were given these horse shoes, which are also known as shods, which are made of iron, right? So that's the point about shods, Ayushi. I'm hoping that point is clear. Okay. Okay, cool. Ayushi has a question. Ayushi, yes, I remember that. We'll deal with that towards the end of the class. Yeah, because I'm on the flow of 3 orders. So once we finish the 3 orders lesson for today, then we'll talk about that idle student, right? So I remember that, Ayushi. So not a problem. Namit is here. Hi, Namit. Hi. Cool. Where were we? We finished this slide. Yeah? Okay. These are all like the list of developments that we are listing here, right? The list of technological advancements that were happening during the turn of the 11th century. Yeah. So another advancement is the increased use of wind and water energy. Yeah, for agriculture. Obviously, like now people don't have to like probably draw water from the well and irrigate every part of the field, but now they have like proper irrigation systems in place, some kind of use of water energy. And in the same manner, wind energy is also used for increasing the productivity of the agricultural lands. Yeah, So that's another advancement. And water powered and wind powered mills were like usually set up all over Europe, right? And what were they used for? They were used for milling corn and pressing grapes. Yeah, like corn was one such plant, one such crop which was heavily harvested in the European region, especially in the medieval period, right? So Europe, corn was very much in demand, and that is why it needed a lot of work to mill the corn, right? Like all of them are like small seeds. Like some used to buy them the whole corn cob, but sometimes people wanted them after the peeling of the seeds, right? So that peeling of the seeds take a lot of time, but with the invention of the wind mills and the water powered mills, this process became much easier, right? And they helped in the milling of corn alongside the pressing of grapes. Yeah, pressing of grapes is nothing but wine making. Yeah. And apart from all of these advancements, there were also changes in the land use patterns, right? So this kind of land use, again, we have seen in the last class what land use is. Now we'll see what the developments are. So the most revolutionary out of all of these land use changes is the turn from a 2-field to a 3-field system. Again, what is a 2-field? What is a 3-field? We will look at all of them in greater detail here. Yeah, so again, I'll just draw a figure here so that you'll understand in a better manner. Let's say this is some kind of agricultural plot. Yeah, like a piece of plot owned by one particular peasant. Yeah, so now initially, I think we've discussed this concept in the last class also, which is called as crop rotation. Yeah. Initially, what the farmer used to do is divide the whole plot into 2 areas. Yeah, and in the first 6 months of the year, he used to cultivate the first part, leaving the second part empty. And in the next 6 months, the first plot is left empty and the second plot is cultivated. Right? So that is a 2-field system. But now what is happening in the 11th century is there is a 3-field system in place where the entire land is divided into 3 portions. Yeah. So now what is happening, like peasants could use a field 2 years out of 3. If they planted it with one crop in autumn and a different crop in the spring, a year and a half later again. So now the period is not 1 year, but the period is 2 years, right? So now what used to happen is, during the same time, during the first half of the period, the same time, the first 2 plots are cultivated. Yeah, like the grains are sown in the first 2 parts of the plot. The crop used to be there, the third part is left empty, and then they used to grow it, fertilizers, pesticides, harvesting used to happen, and once all the produce is out, right, they used to leave the first plot empty. Yeah, in the second phase, they used to leave the first plot empty and cultivate the second and third. Right, now first is gone. Yeah, they used to cultivate the second and third, and the same process used to happen. Once this is harvested, then they used to cultivate the 1 and third. Now the second is empty. Right, so what are we seeing here? Each portion of the land is used twice in a year. Yeah, so which basically means higher productivity, because more crops are being grown, more amount is being amount of time is being spent by the farmers. So like the result of all this is more productivity in agriculture. Yeah, like the surplus of grains and resources. That is what happens. Okay, any questions regarding the 2-field to a 3-field system? Because it's slightly conceptual, so if you all did not understand, I'll explain it again. So like in case you all have questions, just put them down in the chat box. What can be evidence for technological changes? Okay, Aditya, to answer your question regarding the evidences, or you're asking some kind of sources which kind of prove that there are technological advances happening. Number one, these are literally the same sources, right? That these can be textual sources, because back in those days in the 11th century, everything which was happening in the market, including transactions, economies, social life, everything was being written down by the scribes, either on manuscripts, or like paper was already famous by that time. So either on paper it was being written down. Yeah, so if you read those documents now, like historians have extensively read them in the 20th 19th centuries, so even if you read them now, they'll give you evidence that in so and so century technological advancement was happening. So these are like direct sources. We don't have to like prove anything, it's just there in the text, right? So these are some of the textual sources. I'm hoping that answers your question, Aditya. If it's not clear, I'll try to answer it in some other way. Just let me know, Aditya. Okay. No problem, Ayushi. Just keep listening from now. Yeah. Cool. We were talking about the two crop to the three crop system, the two field to the three field. So that's pretty much it. Like all these points basically sum up whatever I've told till now. But just like a revision, I'll just read out the points so it's clear to you. Yeah. So in this type of system, like in the three field type of system, peasants could use a field 2 years out of 3, right? If they planted it with one crop in autumn and a different crop in spring, a year and a half later. Yeah, basically leaving some portion of the land empty for a minimum amount of time while the others are being cultivated, and then take turns to leave the other part empty while the first ones are cultivated. Yeah, again crop rotation itself, but some kind of complicated form of crop rotation. Yeah, this meant that farmers could break their holdings into 3 fields, just the point I made, the diagram I drew. They could plant one with wheat and rye in autumn for human consumption, right? Like they're listing out what kind of crops can be grown. So the first type of plant can be either wheat or rye. What is a rye? It's some kind of grass with the grains towards the end, right? So these type of crops were usually grown in autumn, which are basically used for human consumption. And in the second phase, the peas, beans and lentils, again oats and barley, all of such kind of crops were grown, but these are not totally for human consumption, right? The first three, which are peas, beans and lentils, obviously humans consumed them. But when it comes to oats and barley, like oats humans also ate, but mostly back in those days oats and barley were consumed by the horses. Yeah, horses were also very important for them. Most of their life and like earnings depended on their horses. So like survival of the horses is also as equally important as the survival of the humans. So you also have to like feed the horses with proper food and fodder. Yeah, and while these two are being cultivated, the third land is basically barren or empty, right? And then they take turns to leave the first plot empty and cultivate the second, third. You know, like the same cycle continues every 2 years. Yeah, each year they rotated the use among the 3 fields. I'm hoping the concept is clear. It's a little bit technical, but in case it's not clear even now, I'll be happy to explain it again. Just let me know in the chat box. Yeah? Okay. Aishi, yes. Again, if you're asking is tomorrow the last class for this chapter, yes. Today is the 4th part. Tomorrow we'll be having the 5th, which is the last part of the chapter. And on Tuesday we can have a quiz on the chapter. Yeah, so that's the rough plan we have for the coming classes. Okay, Ayushi has some kind of suggestion. I can definitely like look into it, Ayushi. I mean, I once wanted to, but now I didn't. I think I don't want to attempt it anymore. I don't know, like I have to figure out stuff. But anyways, like thanks for recommending. Oh, okay, thanks so much. That means a lot, Aishi. Thanks, anyways. Cool. We will move on. So we were towards the end of the slide, but I was telling like in case any questions regarding this 2-field, 3-field system, just let me know in the chat box. Okay. So with these improvements, right, like we've seen a lot of things that were changing during the turn of the 11th century. So definitely improvements were there, and because of that, what is the outcome? What is the result here? Obviously, the result here is the increase in the amount of food production. Definitely, right? With there's so much technology being put in, there's so much effort being put in. The end result of it will be the increase in the production of grains. Yeah. So let's say with from 1 acre of land before the 11th century, we were getting like 1 ton of grains, like 1 ton of wheat grains, let's say. Now, because of the technological developments, we are getting 2 tons of grains, 2 tons of wheat grains from the same piece of land. That is a huge benefit to the farmer, to the peasant, right? So that kind of developments were happening in the 11th century because of technology. Yeah, grains are available in abundant quantities, which means that food availability doubled, right? They can be easily accessible in the market. Like people can just go out and like buy anything they want because there's availability there. Yeah, there's no scars or there's no lack of. And the greater use of plants like peas and beans meant more vegetable proteins in the diet. Before that, like hardly only pulses and cereals were cultivated, not many vegetable crops. But from the 11th century, peas and beans are actually good sources of fiber and proteins, right? They were included in the diet of a human, like diet of a European. Yeah, it basically improved the diet of a European, and Europeans became much healthier because of eating beans and beans, right? And it also acted as some kind of source of fodder for their animals, right? Animals are also important here. They also need to survive. Yeah. And for cultivators, obviously, like for the peasants, it meant better opportunities because now if they are going to sell that 2 tons or like 2 tons of wheat grains in the market, they're going to get like double the money they used to get before, right? So more wealth and more income. It's a good thing for the peasants. They could now produce more food from less land. Yeah, double the production. So now what happened? The average size of a peasant's farm, which earlier was somewhere roughly around 100 acres, yeah, 100 acres were cultivated by one average size of a peasant initially. But now that 100 acres have been reduced to almost 20-30 acres by the 13th century. Right? Drastic changes in these 2 centuries. Yeah? This size of the farm shrank down drastically. And holdings which were smaller could be more effectively cultivated. Obviously, right? Like if you have only a little thing to take care of, you will put so much time into it, you will put so much effort into it, and that in itself will be very much efficient, right? So that is exactly what happened. The holdings became much smaller, which in turn became more effective. Yeah, and smaller plot means you don't need much labor also. Let's say for a 100-acre plot you need 100 laborers. If you only have 30 acres of plot, you only need 30 laborers. So the peasant need not give any salaries or wages to those extra laborers. That money is also left with the farmer himself. So all of these are some kind of benefits to the farmers, to the cultivators. Yeah. And now since the plots became much smaller, let's say 5-6 hours a day he's working in the fields, and the rest of the day he has ample amount of time to do other activities. Let's say he's setting up a side business, he's doing something else, or he's just time passing, like leisure, fun, partying and all that stuff, whatever it is, but he has time for other activities, right? So the lives of the peasants are changing here, right? So what are we connecting here? We're connecting two totally different elements. One is technology, right? Because of technology, the whole life of the peasant is changing. Yeah, now he's becoming like a part-time farmer and like a part-time something else. Yeah, so that's what I mean by the life change. Okay. Any questions still here? Just put them down in the chat box. I'll quickly answer, but if not, we can go ahead. Okay. Cool. So now we look at the external side of all these technological changes, right? Obviously, like all of this technology involved a lot of money. If you want to buy a watermill or if you want to buy a windmill or establish one, obviously these needed a lot of money, which peasants obviously did not have. They had enough money to survive, right? Like to buy food, to pay the rent of their house, or like to look after their children and family. That much like self-sufficient they were, but they did not have enough money, or they weren't luxurious enough to set up all these watermills and windmills, right? So all of these kinds of extravagant things, like luxurious things, these were these initiatives were taken by the lords, right? Lords are basically the second order. Yeah, just keep connecting it with the three orders, right? Like till now we've talked about peasants, so peasants basically belong to the third order. Now we're talking about lords. Lords are the second order, right? So just keep going back to the three orders, because that is the main purpose of the chapter. So that kind of initiatives were taken by the lords because cultivators did not have enough money, and uh, peasants, like because of so much revenue being generated because of the agricultural production, they have enough money to take like smaller initiatives, right? Like all these like setting up watermills and windmills are like larger initiatives. They need a lot of money, but not stuff like that, but like small initiatives like extending the arable land, right? Like arable here is the land suitable for cultivation, right? That's the definition of arable. So peasant has enough money to extend the arable land, and how will he do that per se? Probably like one means is buy an axe, or like buy some sort of tools and all of those physical apparatus, right? So that you will be able to clear the forest land and cultivate or carry out agriculture in the forest land. Yeah, so that's basically extending your territories or boundaries of the agricultural land, extending your arable land. So that much so the peasants can do, that much money they have. Yeah, and they did that in fact. And they also switched to the 3-field rotation of crops, the point I exactly mentioned in the last slide. And because now they have so many tools and all, like what if the tools have some kind of damage, right? Like some kind of repair, or it stopped working and now it needs repair. So what will they do? That is why they also set up all these small forges and smithies in the villages. What are these again? These are repair shops. Smithies is like a shop of a blacksmith. Yeah, so these were set up in the villages itself, and if any repair, farmers used to run to the smithies. Yeah, like iron tipped plows and horseshoes, if they have any repair, all of them were repaired very cheaply by the smithies. Yeah, and from the 11th century, now we actually see another kind of change that is happening. Till now we've talked about technology, right? Because of these technological changes, something else is happening in the society. What is that something else? The first point is the personal bonds that had been the basis of feudalism were weakening. A very important point, a very crucial point. So what's happening here? Let's say I'm the lord and I have peasants working under me. Initially what I used to do, they are providing me service and I used to give them like grains or something else, but not money. I'm not paying them salary in the form of currency or coins. I'm only giving them some kind of incentives. Let's say I'm giving you 1 kilo of rice for the service that you're giving to me. Yeah, this is some kind of like informal bonds, right? These are personal bonds between the lord and the peasant. Now that is weakening, that is no more in existence from the 11th century, because the economic transactions within the general society, within the general economy, are becoming more and more money based. Yeah, now there's no barter system. I want rice, I'll go to the shop, I'll buy rice and I'll pay him the money. He can't give me something else. I can't give him something else for the rice I want. Yeah, so that's how there's no more barter system. There's only like money based transactions that were happening in the 11th century Europe. Yeah, so that was happening in the 11th century. Any questions still here, guys? Okay, continue, ma'am. Thanks, Abhinand. Thanks, Aishi, for responding. Cool. So we were talking about the personal bonds being becoming weaker and weaker because of the money-based transactions. We'll look at that in further detail in the next couple of slides. Yeah. So now what, right? Like, lords found it convenient to ask for rent in cash. Yeah, so again the same example, I am the lord, somebody is working under me. Yeah, they are living in my land, or like they're living in my house, and I want them to pay me the rent because they're using my property. Initially what used to happen is they just didn't pay any sort of rent. Instead they used to come and work in my house, yeah, as servants or like provide some kind of services. But now the lords are not accepting any services anymore. They're like, you pay me the rent in cash, that's it, final. Yeah, so these kind of like harsh implementations of the lords are becoming uncomfortable to the peasants. Yeah, but nonetheless they have to abide by the rules, and that is how the transactions were taking place in the 11th century England. Yeah, and in the same manner cultivators are also selling their crops for money. The same thing, like no barter system, but a good for money, not a good for a good. Yeah, so traders are buying them from the agricultural peasants, right? Now they would take these goods or like grains or like edible materials, whatever it is, to be sold in the towns. Yeah, so now what are we seeing again? There's clearly some sort of market system that was in place back in those times, because traders are taking all of these excess surplus food grains into the towns to sell them, right? And nextly, the increasing use of money began to influence prices, right? Obviously, right, like the same system, like any economic students, you'll know what that supply demand chain is. Yeah, that's the same manner, like there's so much of money available in the market and the value of every good is increasing. Yeah, all of these economic principles which operate the economy. Yeah, which became higher in times of poor harvests. Again, like there's no grain available, there's only like some grains available in the market. Obviously their prices will hike, the prices will increase, right? When there's so much quantity of grains available, the prices will decrease. right? Economic students, just help out your friends if any of them have any doubts what the supply demand theory is. Yeah, but like roughly what I can say is more the availability of grains, lesser the price. Lesser the availability of grains, more the price. Yeah, it's like a indirect relationship. Yeah, so that's that. And in England, right, like for instance, agricultural prices, they doubled between the 1270 and 1320. Within 50 years, within half a century, the prices of everything almost doubled in England. Yeah, so that's the value of money. That's the value of economic transactions taking place in the form of currency, but not barter system anymore. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we have for the economic transactions. Any questions till here, guys? Ayushi, no, I did not have psychology in my 11th 12th. I had history, I had geography, and also I had public administration. So these were the three subjects I had in my 11th 12th. Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Ayushi. That's exactly the point. But like in case anybody is not able to understand anything regarding these economic terms, please tell me, guys, because at least for me economics is harder. So I don't know how you guys feel, but like in case any questions, just ask. I'll try to clarify them as much as I can. Yeah? Okay. No questions, and therefore we'll quickly move on to the next slide. Cool. So we will be dealing with another new sub theme from this slide, right? It's titled as a fourth order question mark. Who actually constituted this fourth order? It's new towns and townspeople. Again, why is there a question mark after a fourth order, right? So the thing here is, officially these people are not recognized as a fourth order because there are only three orders in the society. That is what the chapter's name suggests, right? Then where did this fourth order come from? We'll talk about that in detail in this slide and the next couple of slides. But for now, just remember that the fourth order is not official, right? There is some other group of population that is emerging after the improvement and advancement in technologies, and some scholars or historians wanted to call this a fourth order, but there's not enough evidence to call it as a fourth order, right? So that's why there's a question mark after the fourth order. Okay. Okay, Ayushi has a comment to make. Economics difficult hai, but acha. I mean, that's subjective, Ayushi, but like, cool. I think I agree with you. It's difficult, but doable, like manageable. Yeah, like pol science is nice. Anyways, we'll quickly move on. We don't have time. Okay, we've seen that expansion in agriculture is happening, but because of the expansion in agricultural productivity, there is something else also which is growing, right? In fact, three related areas which are growing. And what are they? The first one is population, yeah. The second one is trade, and the third are towns, right? All of these growing of these things are happening simultaneously. Yeah, the first is population, the second is trade, and the third is towns. So all of this is happening, and again, like examples, right? Like from roughly 42 million in 1000 AD, Europe's population stood at 62 million around 1200 and 73 million in 1300. Again, like rough stats, you don't have to remember all of that, just to give you an idea, right? Like they almost like kept doubling in the 3-4 centuries. That's a lot. That's the population that was growing. Yeah. Also, like, this better food, as we've discussed, there is some kind of nutrients or protein availability which was there for the consumption of the people, right? Because of that, they are maintaining a healthy diet, and if they have a good diet, obviously they will have a longer lifespan. And according to the reports and according to the like the surveys and all, by the 13th century, yeah, because of the good nutrients that their body is receiving, because of the genetical process, like the DNA, like the reproduction, all of that biological stuff, yeah, the end result is the average life expectancy of a European person, yeah, it has grown by 10 years. And how did it happen? Like, when did it happen? In a span of just 5 centuries. Let's say, roughly, for example, during the 8th century in Europe, the estimate lifespan was 60 years. Now, coming to the 13th century, it grew by 10 years, and now the life expectancy is 70. Right? That's a huge improvement. So that was happening in the 13th century England. And like, there's some kind of gender disparity here. Like, men often ate better food than women and younger girls, and that is why the lifespans of men are even better than women, right? So that's a little difference between the gender disparity. Okay. Preeti just joined us. Hi, Preeti. Yeah, I think most schools don't offer psychology, I think, Ayushi. No problem, you can do it once you like go to your undergrad, right? So undergrad has a lot of options, unlike 11th and 12th. You can explore any field you want to. Yeah? So that will be a good opportunity, don't worry. Okay. Um Now we're talking about the growth of, we've talked about growth of population, we've talked about growth of life expectancy. Now we'll be talking about the growth of towns, right? So like, we've seen the downfall of Roman Empire, like we've just discussed in brief. So like, when the Roman Empire came to an end, there were no more like towns or cities, all of them were deserted, like all of them, like people left all these big cities and went and settled down in the villages, and they started practicing agriculture, right? So because of that, what happens, for the next couple of centuries in medieval Europe, there were no major cities. Yeah, mostly like 90+% of the population used to live in the villages itself, mostly relying on agriculture or like animal husbandry and related activities, but not the city dwelling life. Yeah, so that used to happen. But from the 11th century, because of the technology, because of agricultural production increase, yeah, because population is so much, they can live so longer, all of these factors combined, they resulted in the growing of towns once again. So after Roman Empire, almost like after a millennium, this is the first time that Europe is experiencing the growth of towns again, like in a rapid manner. Yeah, so that's a huge change. And peasants who had surplus grains, like, because the productivity is more, it was self-sufficient, but they were also like something else remaining, like surplus production. They wanted to sell it, obviously, because they can't store it for years and years together. They have to sell it, and for them to sell something, they need a market, right? And in the market, they also need to put up some sort of selling center or like a shop where people could come and buy. Yeah, so for that to happen, like, they need to buy, right? So periodically fairs used to happen, like there were no permanent shops and all. Yeah, so there were periodic fairs used to happen, like temporary settlements, let's say every once in a week or like every Sunday, right? I go to the market, I set up my own stall, whatever I have, I'll just put it for sale. Yeah, so these are called periodic fairs. And there were like small marketing centers, right? that is happening till the 11th 12th centuries. Now what is the change here, right? How did the towns come into being? So these periodic fairs, these small marketing centers, eventually, like slowly, they developed into towns, right? Because people started growing in number, there's a lot of demand for goods, yeah, people visited markets a lot. Because of all these features, the town started growing. And what are some features of a town, right? Like there has to be something which defines a town. What are those features? In the medieval Europe, they were a town square, right? Like a commercial center in a town. And then there's a church. And then roads where merchants built shops and houses. Now these are permanent settlements. Initially there were only like temporary shops. Now merchants could actually like settle down in one particular place and build a proper shop and like regularly go there and sell items, right? So that kind of permanency has become a common factor in the 12th 13th centuries. And alongside all these features, there was also an office within the town itself who governed the where all these like important officials met to govern the town, yeah, to set up some rules or regulations and all that stuff. So that kind of growth was also there in the towns, especially in the 11th 12th centuries. And towns often grew around large castles, bishops' estates, or large churches. Around these places, towns used to build up. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the town's growth. We also have a lot to talk about in the next slide, but any questions still here, just put them down in the chat box. Okay, if no questions, then I will go ahead. Cool. In towns, right? Like, again, we're back to towns because towns are growing in number. And instead of the services, yeah, people paid a tax to the lord who owned the land on which the town stood. What is happening again? There's no barter system now. Money is definitely involved and tax is paid in the form of currency, in the form of money, right? So whenever you're using something which belonged to other people, I'm supposed to pay the rent for that. That is exactly what's happening in the towns as well. And towns offered the prospect for paid work, right? Obviously there are so many opportunities, there's so many prospects for work, right, for which you will be paid, unlike the forced exploitative labor under the lords. Now you can actually be paid. So these towns have become some kind of freedom places, right? Like just imagine like all of these serfs and all, which we've discussed in a couple of classes back, where we've also seen that lords used to exploit them. There's so much of discrimination. They did not even have like enough food to eat. To take a day off, they're supposed to take permission from the peasants and all of these, permission from the lords. Very restrictive features, like their whole life was controlled by the lord. In order to escape that, yeah, all of these peasants saw it as an opportunity to move to the towns so that they can live their own life. Nobody will have the ability to control the peasant's life if they are in a town, right? So towns have become some kind of freedom places for these peasants. That's what I mean by the freedom place, yeah. So there's also like a popular slogan that was going on in the 11th 12th centuries, right? It says town air makes free. Like once you feel that town atmosphere, you will, like have that warmth within yourself, and you will get that kind of relief that, oh my god, like I'm a free individual, I'm a free bird, yeah. So that kind of feeling is given by the town atmosphere. This is just like one kind of popular slogan which was there in circulation in the society. And the same point I was mentioning, like all of these serfs who were exploited, they just were so desperate to run away, and they kind of hid in these towns, right? They ran away from their lords and hid in these towns. And that's a condition, right? Like if a serf or like if a peasant could stay for 1 year and 1 day, which is generally 366 days. Yeah, if he could manage to stay for 366 days without his lord discovering him, basically he should not come under the scrutiny of the lord, right? So if he can stay for 366 days without his lord discovering him, he would be declared as a free man. That is exactly what the serfs wanted. Yeah, they're so desperate to, get rid of those clutches of the lord. So you manage to stay for 366 days without lord interfering into the life, you're free. That's a huge bonus. That's a huge offer. So yeah, that was happening in the 11th century. And many people in towns were free peasants or escaped serfs who provided unskilled labor. See, these were the people who were living in the towns. They don't have any skill. They don't have any talent to do some sort of professional work. But they can put physical labor, right? They can be construction workers, or they can be vegetable sellers. They can be anything which does not involve skill, right? So these are basically unskilled laborers who were majorly living in the towns. Just like shopkeepers and merchants as well, they also don't need any skill. They're not professional jobs, and that is why there were so many shopkeepers and merchants who were there in the towns. Yeah, so that's about the town atmosphere. Again guys, any questions till here? Okay, I don't see any. Therefore, I'll continue. Yeah. So it was going like life was smooth and all, but there was one point of time in history, like probably like a century or two later, that there was a need for individuals with specialized skills. Now the towns actually started demanding skills from people. For example, like bankers or lawyers, right? Anybody can't become these. They need to have a special expertise, special skill in order to become a banker or a lawyer, right? And because of that, the bigger towns had populations of about 30,000. That is a lot in those days. Yeah, now 30,000 means nothing. But in those days, and especially in Europe, which is scarcely populated at that time, 30,000 was a lot. So these people, till now, whomever we talked about, especially people living in the towns, they are said to have formed a fourth order. Again, this is a speculation. This is what some portion of the historians want to call the fourth order as. But officially there is no fourth order. Yeah, so remember that. And the basis of economic organization was the guild. Again, all of us know what guilds are. Guilds are nothing but associations or groups. Yeah, let's say I am a goldsmith. There are so many goldsmiths, all of my colleagues and friends. So all of these goldsmiths came together and formed an association, right? We would have regular meetings. We will discuss all the prices. We will discuss about certain other aspects of the business, right? So same occupation people coming together and forming a group is called a guild, right? So the basis for the economic organization in the society was a guild, right? Each craft or industry, like every occupation had their own guild, right? And to commonly, like together, they used to come to some consensus and decide the quality of the product as well as its price and its sale, right? These are common rules which were established by the guild, and all of the members of the guild are supposed to follow those rules. Yeah. And the guild hall was a feature of every town. Like this, there's specially a guild hall in every town, right? And here all of these grand events or like ceremonial functions used to happen in this building, and the heads, like every guild had a leader, right? So all of these heads of the guilds used to meet formally in the guild hall to discuss any business affairs. Yeah, so that used to happen. And lastly, guards patrolled the town halls. These are basically security guards I'm talking about. The town was always fortified. Yeah, the huge walls running around the town, and there were like security or like watchmen looking after the towns so that no outsider would enter. And if there are any like feasts or grand events happening, musicians used to come and perform. So now we also see an element of entertainment, right? Travelers were there, innkeepers were there, like all of these provisions were made available in the medieval Europe by 12th 13th century, right? So all of these are some kind of developments that were happening back in those times. Okay, so I'll just quickly glance through because I think we're running out of time. But like anyways, so like by the 11th century, there were also like new trade routes which were emerging, which kind of connected the Europe with the West Asia. West Asia basically means like Saudi Arabia, all these Gulf areas like Oman, Yemen, and all these people, all these countries, right? Turkey and all. So all of these countries were directly connected to the Europe, right? So much trade used to happen, imports and exports, and not just this, Scandinavian people. Like again, what are Scandinavian? All of these countries which are towards the Arctic Circle, again guys, just imagine a world map in your head. Just roughly locate where Europe is. Yeah, above Europe, you have all these countries like Denmark, Norway, Finland. Yeah, so all of these countries are together called as Scandinavian countries, and merchants from the Scandinavian region as well, they started sailing south, yeah, via the North Sea to reach Europe, right? And what did they trade? They actually traded furs and hunting hawks for cloth. It's a cold region. They obviously needed like sweaters and like woolen material and all. So that's why they traded fur material, which keeps a human being warm. Yeah. So in the same manner, like English traders came to sell tin. Like tin is the metal which is very famous in England. Yeah. So they came to sell tin. In the same manner, French people also started investing themselves in commerce and crafts, right? But from the France region as well, trade was growing by the 12th century. And what used to happen earlier is craftsmen used to travel from manor to manor. Yeah, we know what manors are, the estates of the lords. So like if I'm a craft person, right, like I have some kind of pottery, let's say, I want to sell it. I used to travel from one manor to another asking people to buy my stuff. But now my job is easier because I have a shop of my own. I'll put all the materials I have which are for sale in my shop. People will come and buy them. I don't have to roam. Right? So that's the advantage of the development. And as the number of towns grew and trade continued to expand, yeah, obviously all of these merchants became much richer and powerful. Yeah, they gained such a position in society that they have equal resources to the nobility, to the lord. Again, these are in some sense challenging, or they are some sort of rivalries to the power of nobility. Yeah, that's a huge development again. Yeah, so like last two slides, I'll just finish this up very quickly. But like Ayushi, your point about Sweden and Norway being the Scandinavian countries, absolutely right. I think there are like 5 countries which are categorized as Scandinavian. Yeah, Sweden and Norway are one of them. Denmark, Finland, and I think there's something else also, but just look it up in case anybody wants. The next sub theme here is cathedral towns. Just 2 more slides, guys. I'll finish up very quickly. So one of the ways that rich merchants spend their money was by making donations to churches. Again, we're saying that all of these merchants and traders, they have a lot of money. What will they do with the money? Some don't want to spend it, or they want to keep it to themselves. That's fine. But like majority of these merchants, they want to spend it somewhere. They want to make some kind of donations, right? And therefore they donated all of their wealth to the church. Yeah, these are not normal churches. These are called as cathedrals, right? Again, what's the difference between cathedrals and churches, right? It's just the size difference. Churches are usually smaller, cathedrals are much larger. Yeah, from the 12th century, so many cathedrals were built in France, and these usually belong to monasteries, right? We've seen monks, nuns, friars, monasteries a couple of classes back. So like all of these merchants used to make donations to the monasteries where they built a cathedral, right? Other people in the town as well, how much ever they could, even though they are not rich enough, they made their own contribution, right? That contribution can either be money, in terms of money, or in terms of materials. Let's say they have extra doors or extra windows, they will contribute that to the cathedral. Yeah, these are materials. And it can also be their own labor, right? They are volunteering to work in the construction department of the cathedral, right? So their contribution can be anything, either money, either materials, or labor. So usually all these cathedrals was built of stone, and since they were huge and large, it took many years to complete one cathedral, right? And as they were being built, yeah, it takes a lot of time, let's say like 3-4 years, right? Within these 3-4 years, the area around the cathedral will become has become much populated, because people know that once cathedral is established, yeah, so much development is going to take place around the cathedral, and therefore people were in a hurry to populate the areas around the cathedral, yeah. And therefore they became like major centers of pilgrimage once the construction is done, right? So we can also, like, I'm not exaggerating here, but like one can fairly conclude by saying that all of these towns started developing around the cathedrals, right? So that's how important the feature of cathedrals is for the development of towns, yeah. And lastly, cathedrals were designed so that the priest's voice could be heard clearly, yeah, within the hall. Fairly simple to make his voice much more clearer and better for the audience. Obviously, because cathedral had so many people coming and gathering for worship of the Christ, Christians mostly, yeah. So whatever the father or the priest is saying, standing on the dais, all of the people need to listen, right? So the walls are constructed in such a way that the sound is echoed, right? And that's why everybody in the hall could listen to the priest. Like monks used to sing there, like all the sounds were very beautiful, like chiming bells. Like during the times of Christmas, we usually have all these like decorations, chiming bells and stuff, right? So in the churches, they are there 365 days of a year, and these chiming bells, whenever they were rung, it's the sign that it's time for prayer, and therefore people used to come and gather in the cathedral to perform their prayers, right? Because this chiming bell, the sound of these chiming bells could be heard over a very long distance, yeah. And often the windows of the cathedrals used stained glass, right? Again, what is a stained glass? To put it in simple terms, during the day, yeah, if you are inside the cathedral, nobody from outside could look at you, yeah. So that's how the stained glasses work. And during the night, yeah, outside people can actually look what's happening inside the cathedral because of the stained glass, yeah. That's again a special feature of the stained glass, and they were used in the cathedral. And these glasses were not plain glasses, right? They had some kind of design slash painting slash pictures which were there on the windows, right? And what are these pictures? They are the stories as a part of the Bible, right? Let's say the famous Noah story, which we looked at in a couple of chapters before, yeah. So when there's a flood, he basically puts all of these animals and human people into the ship, right? So if you remember, like any story per se, right? All of these stories in the Bible, they are depicted on the stained glass windows in the form of pictures. So that even if I can't read, like even if anybody can't read, pictures so everybody can understand, right? Like you just have to look at the picture and then you'll get an idea. So like even the illiterate people could read those pictures. So that's what the stained glasses are about. The last slide, again, it's pretty much self-explanatory, this one. So there's a person called Abbot Sugar, right? He lived in the 11th, 12th centuries, like to be very specific, from 1081 to 1151, right? He describes about the Abbey of Saint Denis. Yeah, Abbey is some kind of monastery. That monastery is called as Saint Denis, and the one which he is describing about is near Paris, right? Fairly simple. If you can just give it one read, it's very, very clear, right? He says that again, like all of this is not necessary, but we also cause to be painted, right? Like by the exquisite hands of many masters from different regions, a splendid variety of new windows. Like he's basically describing the architectural style of the abbey, right? Which is the Abbey of Saint Denis. He says that windows are valuable because they have all these wonderful paintings on them, and glass and sapphire glass was used. Yeah, official, like professional craftsmen used to craft all these materials. There was a goldsmith who is in charge of repairing, like doing his part of the work, right? And all of these people were paid in allowances, yeah, namely coins from the altar. Yeah, so again, like nobody neglected their duty, right? Like everybody was very loyal towards their duty. All of these artworks, which are depicted in a very aesthetic manner, they were very, very I wouldn't say like crucial, but they were very appealing to the people, and that is why Abbot Sugar is writing about them in much, much greater detail. Yeah, so cool. I think I went overboard but for like 15 minutes, but like I'm hoping the point is clear. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of the class for today. Any questions, guys? Please don't hesitate, ask them in the chat box. Yeah, Radhika was talking about donations. Yes, Radhika, you're right. Nimisha just joined us. Good evening, Nimisha, but like unfortunately the class is over. So like if you're confused about the class timings, guys, the class starts at 6 p.m. It's not a 7 p.m. class, right? So yeah, cool. Ayushi's point, right? Like lastly, guys, just in 1 minute I'll wrap this up. So Ayushi has a point regarding the previous chapter, like a question regarding the previous chapter as to who an ideal student is in regards to the Quran. Yeah, so in that particular chapter we have a whole box dedicated to who an ideal student is in terms of being a Islam follower, like a Muslim, right? There are a list of provisions, yeah, but there are some provisions I would list out here. Yeah, number one is basically you're supposed to pray 5 times a day, which is called as namaz, right? So without fail, an ideal student is somebody who prays for 5 times a day, and then sometimes he also not sometimes, but like whenever possible, he also needs to go on a hajj. Hajj is the pilgrimage, right? They're supposed to go to Mecca and Medina, which are supposed to be like the divine places for Muslims, right? Apart from that, he also need to follow some of the moral principles like abstaining from killing, or you're not supposed to steal. You're also supposed to treat others in a very humanly manner, like should not look down upon other humans. So all of these are some of the features of an ideal student. Yeah, so roughly this is the the gist of what an ideal student should be like. There are other provisions as well, right? But roughly these points kind of sum up what an ideal student is. Is that clear, Ayushi? Okay, just let me know if that's clear or not in the chat box. But like I'll try to wind the session up before Ayushi answers. Cool. So regarding the plus and iconic offers, I was talking about in the beginning of the class, there is an offer going on right now. And as I was telling you, if you can use the code which is TUM10, you'll obviously get a 10% off straight away. But if you do it before 25th of October, it's an extended festive offer, you will get an additional 10% off, right? So that's a limited offer. Go grab yours before it ends, guys. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I know it's a 80 minutes long class. I'm sorry for the extension, but like I'm hoping, because we're in a hurry to complete the syllabus, right? Because most of your schools have completed the syllabus for term 1 and have also like stepped into term 2, right? So we're also like almost done. Within 2 more classes we'll be finishing term 1 as well. So like we are like up to the mark. So like don't worry about that, guys. Cool. Okay, thanks so much, guys, again for tuning in. Also, like next class we have is tomorrow. It's a Sunday, but it's not an evening class. It's going to be a morning class at 11 a.m. right? I'm hoping everybody will tune in for tomorrow's class, which is at 11 a.m. in the morning, with where we'll be talking about this chapter itself, but I'll be finishing up the chapter tomorrow, right? So if there are any questions or clarifications you need regarding this chapter, you can tune in tomorrow and ask me, because on Tuesday we'll be having a quiz about this, right? Quiz on this chapter itself. So tomorrow is the last day for any sort of questions, so I'm hoping people will tune in tomorrow as well for the concluding part. Yeah, that's all we have for today, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. Any other questions? I wake up by like 8, Ayushi, like 8, 9. Unless it's a holiday. Holidays though, I don't know. Anyways, I know it's a Sunday. I know you all don't want to wake up on a Sunday. Probably y'all will sleep till like 2 p.m., 3 p.m. in the afternoon. But like, I don't know, guys. Just for one day, just please wake up and like tune in for the class at 11 a.m. Yeah? Cool then. Yeah, that's the end of the class. Unless y'all have any questions or any clarifications y'all need, stay back. Otherwise, y'all are free to leave. Thanks once again. Thanks so much for coming. I highly appreciate it. Yeah. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Till then, have a good evening. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. Bye, Ayushi. Bye, bye. Bye, Namit. Huh. Bye, Namit. Cool. I don't see any further questions. I think that's the end of the class. Chalo then, I will end this session. Okay guys, bye. Take care. Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow at 11. Yeah? Bye everyone.